What about the wudu of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now, as we're talking about the ibadah, I want to recite to you a hadith from Al-Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salam. He captures to us the wudu of the Prophet. How the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did ablution. He says to his companion Zurara, "Ala ahki lakum wudu'a Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Do you want to know how the Prophet did wudu? Now, Imam al-Baqir had to say this because there were distortions made at that time, where there were other schools of thought claiming the Prophet did wudu in a different way. Even the wudu had been changed. So Imam al-Baqir is telling us, I'll tell you exactly how the Prophet did wudu. We said, yes, tell us. So he said, bring me a container of water. We brought it for him. Then he basically rolled up his sleeve. ثُمَّ غَمَسَ فِيهِ كَفَّهُ الْيُمْنَى. Then with his right hand, his right palm, he inserted it in the water. And then he says, if your hand is pure, do that. If it's najis, purify it, then put it in the container. Then he put it on his jabeen. If you want the sunnah, when you wash your face, when you start your wudu, the first area that you pour the water is where? Normally, what do people do? Anywhere in the face, right? Which is okay, as long as you cover the face vertically, that's fine. But it's mustahab to start with the jabeen. The jabeen is not the forehead here. Where is it? The side of the forehead, this area. We call this jabeen. The Prophet would start by pouring water on the jabeen, this side and that side. So pour the water just beneath the hairline on the jabeen. فَوَضَعَهَا عَلَى جَبِينِ ثُمَّ قَالَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ. He said Bismillah. Then basically he would come down his blessed beard until he would wash his face. And then he would take with his left palm some water and he would pour it on his elbow, start from the elbow, and he would go down. And then he would wash his left arm. And then he would say, with the remnant moisture, don't acquire new moisture. With the remnant moisture, wipe your head, right feet and left feet. This is how the Prophet ﷺ did his wudu. Unfortunately, many have changed that. Then the Imam says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وِتْرٌ يُحِبُّ الْوِتْرِ فَقَدْ يُجْزُؤُكَ مِنَ الْوُضُوءِ ثَلَاثُ غُرَفَ وَاحِدَةٌ لِلْوَجْهِ وَإِثْنَتَانِ لِلذِّرَاعَيْنِ. What's the very bare minimum for wudu? 3 times you draw water from a container. 1 for your face, 1 for your arm, 1 for your other arm. That's it. That's very basic. Some people think that wudu means you drench yourself in water. And I've seen some people, they take scoop after scoop of water, like 10, 15, 20, washing the face. You don't have to do that. Sometimes that could be a waste of water. Seriously. The Imam says that's enough. The Prophet's wudu was very simple. In fact, in one hadith, Al-Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salam, he says, let me show you the wudu of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He took some water, washed his face, 1 scoop of water, his right arm, 1 scoop of water, his left arm. He did the masih. It's like, that's how the Prophet did wudu. You could do this in 20 seconds. Very simple. Especially at that time when running water was not available. They live in a desert environment. And so even in wudu, conserve water. Don't waste too much water. That's the wudu of the Prophet ﷺ. I think, honestly, we've complicated the wudu. By the way, and I don't know if I should say this, but even at the level of scholars, they want to do ihtiyat, be cautious. Sometimes their wudu takes minutes and minutes. Well, it's good that you're trying to be muhtat, but look, this was the wudu of the Prophet. He was very brief in his wudu. So just learn from the Prophet. No, I need to make sure that, okay, be reasonable. You know, as one would always comment, when that person would see another scholar, you know, trying to rub his arm like 50 times to make sure he got everywhere. So basically his wife told him, look, the water's not scared of your skin. Don't worry, you got it covered. The water is there. So the Prophet would be very brief in his wudu. He would not complicate it. Today, a lot of people privately come to me, they have OCD with this stuff. OCD with tahara, OCD with ghusl, OCD with, I don't know, wudu. This is uncalled for. Yes.
And also, the Rasulullah would say, as he was going.
Yes, we have the dua of the wudu that's documented in our hadith sources. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he would do the dua, the wudu, it's a long dua, but just snippets of it. When he would wash his face, he would say, "Oh Allah, illuminate my face on the day of judgment, when many faces will be darkened." Then when the Prophet ﷺ would wash his right arm, he would say, "Oh Allah, give me my book in my right hand on that day when you give the believers their book." And then, on the left hand, there's a dua when wiping the head, there's a dua when wiping the feet, there's a dua, "Oh Allah, fix me on sirat on the day of judgment." So yes, the Prophet would recite those du'as, and it's highly recommended to recite these du'as. It's called the dua of wudu. We have several versions of them. Some of them from the Prophet, some of them from the Imams. At least read them, print them, put it, on your kitchen cabinet next to the sink where you normally do wudu from, and read it once in a while. Brings barakah to your life.